To be perfectly honest with you all, I don't know much about JRPGs. I've only played a few Final Fantasy games, and I've never touched any of the Dragon Quest or the Xenoblade games, for example, so I haven't played a whole lot of them, although I do love the Persona and the Shin Megami Tensei series. I've played nearly every single one of the games in this franchise, and although I started with Persona 5 way back in the day, I think it was 2018 when I first got the game, I've slowly but surely made my way through the older games over time.
That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
One day, I was browsing through DS games I wanted to emulate when I was younger. Don't kill me, Miyamoto. And as I was browsing through the games I wanted to play, I stumbled across this game by Square Enix called The World Ends With You. Huh, I've heard of that game before, I thought to myself. I'll give the game a shot and I'll see if it's any good. I had no idea at the time, but I was about to play one of the best games I've ever experienced in my whole life. Yeah, the 10k subscriber special is finally here. As a result of this comment being the most liked on my announcement post I made about this video a while ago, The World Ends With You is going to be the topic for today. This video was also going to be a bit rambly and just casual in nature, so just bear with me. I've been making videos for quite a while now on this channel, and I've almost always had my profile picture from Neo, The World Ends With You. On nearly every single one of my videos, I always receive comments from you guys saying you like the profile picture, and that The World Ends With You is one of your favorite games too. I think that's really awesome, and I'm glad the picture is resonating with you all. Before I started writing this video, I struggled thinking about how to explain why I love these games in a timely manner. I don't want you guys to be here for 3 hours after all. After doing some thinking, however, I came up with what I think is a pretty sound reason. On a personal note, I was born in October of 2003, making me 21 as of recording this video. Yep, I was a 2000s kid. DVDs, the Wii, and the DS, and watching timeless cartoons on Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon was just my childhood, and it was awesome. I loved it. I hate to say it because I sound like a boomer, but the younger generations of the future will never understand what it was like to watch Johnny Bravo at 11 PM on Boomerang when you were sick. I miss these times, man, they were so good. Anyway, I think I was around 15 or maybe 16 when I first played The World Ends With You, and everything about the game reminded me of when I was a kid. The sprite art, the presentation, character designs, music, gameplay, writing, etc. all took me back to the early 2000s, and I can't really put into words how I felt upon playing the game for the first time. It was if I had stepped into a time machine that transported me back into a world when systems like the GameCube and the DS were still getting new games, social media wasn't really a thing yet, and Tony Hawk was still having a new game releasing every year. The world that we live in today is extremely different to the world in those days, and this game is honestly one of the few things that takes me back. Every time I see this game, or I think about it, or I hear about it, or whatever, I get a huge nostalgia rush, and it makes me feel as if I'm back in those simpler times, when I was a kid with my DS playing Mario Kart at my grandparents' place. One thing specifically I'd like to touch on about the game is its awesome soundtrack. Composed primarily by Takaharu Ishimoto, the game blends many different genres together, from J-pop, to rock, to whatever this is. Every single song in this game is fantastic. Whether you're just taking a stroll through the game's overworld or you're in a battle with a friend, there's going to be a piece of music that perfectly fits the scene you're in. Another thing that I love about this game is that it has this very youthful energy that just beams throughout. The game's awesome presentation style and characters were inspired by Japanese youth culture of the early 2000s, and it also reminds me of games like Jet Set Radio this way. From Shiki's flip phone to Beat Skater aesthetic all the way to Neku's angsty personality at the start of the game. Dude, this is so 2000s, it's so cool. The World Ends With You, in my opinion, is one of the best examples of a video game lightning in a bottle, if that makes sense. Everything about this game is so unique, quirky, and just downright weird, but it all comes together cohesively to form something truly beautiful. With all of that being said, and you can tell by now that I really love this first game, you can only imagine how excited I was when Neo was announced back in 2020. After we all went through the living hell that was COVID lockdowns, a new game in the series finally being announced was a breath of fresh air, and it cheered me the hell up. But then a scary thought entered my mind. Since the first game was heavily based on what was trendy at the time in the early 2000s, could a modern sequel properly capture that same magic again? Would the new characters, locations, battle mechanics, music, etc. all live up to the original game? Will the sequel just not be as good as the first game? After a long, long wait, I finally got my hands on the game, and although I was extremely excited to play it for the first time, I went in with a bit of trepidation. Thank God that this is the case, but in my opinion, Neo is just as good, if not a little bit better, than the first game. The gameplay? Awesome. The music? Awesome. The weird camera angles that gave me a lot of motion sickness at first? Awesome. Neo takes the original formula from the first game and it updates it while still paying homage to the original at every given opportunity. Even though it's set in the modern day with smartphones and emoji stickers and texting, it still has that really cool and rebellious early 2000s energy, and I haven't played any other modern game like it. If the first game reminded me of being a little kid in the 2000s and not really knowing what was going on in the world, the Neo reminded me of being a slightly older kid in the early 2010s, browsing anime and stylized figurines at nerd stores in the city. Everything about this game is so colourful and vibrant, and it really puts a stupid smile on my face as I was playing it. Just talking about the game makes me want to fire up my Switch again so I can do a New Game Plus playthrough. Both of these games are very ironic, and what I mean by that is that, while these games attempt to display things that were trendy during their time of release, which would in theory make them dated, in reality these games still feel very fresh and modern, especially the first game. This game runs on a dated handheld system, it uses sprite art for its graphics, and it has no online components whatsoever, but the game's design is so tightly constructed that everyone can find it fun, even today. To be honest, I get kind of sad thinking about these games because I highly doubt we'll ever get a third one. Neo didn't sell very well, and Square Enix didn't really market the game either, but people also didn't think a second one would be released back in the day, so I really can't say. In conclusion, you know how people say not to live in the past and to move into the future? These games kind of make me wish I could do the opposite. They make me want to go back in time and just stay there and relive the 2000s again, when it felt like there were no worries in the world at all. I know I'm looking back at the past with extremely large rose-tinted nostalgia goggles, but I can't help it, man, I was a kid back then. This time period back then was arguably the best time of my life, and The World Ends With You helps me relive it in an extremely vivid fashion. I know that was all very long-winded, but I just wanted to put my thoughts on the game into video format for the 10K special. If you made it all the way to the end, thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the future, and if you haven't, play this game, it's so good!